Okay, well, thank you for coming, and thank you to the LAC members as usual, and also to our members of the public. I think there is one, it's Maurice. You all should have the agenda, which has the information regarding financial reports, consumption, and the Vancouver Coastal Health Report, along with the RFP. Our meeting today, Annette will start by doing an overview of the water systems in general. You can ask questions along the way if you'd like, and there's also some time allotted at the end for questions. I'm going to share the screen with you now. There we go. Annette, please.
Hi, I'm just going to give a very brief overview of the Hood Point rate structure, as I think you're all quite familiar with it. In 2019, there were 93 connected lots, no new connections.
Excuse me, mine says blue water.
Oh, that's the wrong.
Yes, mine too.
Belfast, do you have the wrong agenda open?
Will they be able to do single lane alternating? It's quite narrow, yeah. Okay, so then you're going to be closing the road.
Somebody needs to mute their mic because I can hear background noise.
Yeah.
I think it's Steph, and we need her attention to get the right agenda. Steph.
She knows she's looking.
I see you shaved, Steve. I haven't. Your camera shot is directly of your chin.
There we go.
Okay, sorry about that. Try it again. Here
we are. So 93 connections in 2019. The water source is Honeymoon Lake. And water meters are read 4 times a year on February 15th, June 1st, August 15th, October 1st. And the annual flat rate for the connected lots is $780, and there is no charge for the unconnected lots. However, there is a parcel tax of $300 for all connected lots in the Hood Point system, and it is $150 for all lots that have the ability to connect in the Hood Point system. There are no charges for overconsumption, and it is billed annually. And the last bill was just sent out last month in August.
Yeah, no problem.
So there have been no changes here, no increase in water rates. Do you have any questions about the structure? About the rate structure?
Easiest option.
I only have a comment that
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry, it has to do with the certain of the parcel tax lots in the specialized area that there's a consideration of them not being charged for the parcel tax, and I don't know if now is the time to discuss it.
You guys can discuss that with your contractor. Decide who wants to make the application.
Sorry.
Either or, it doesn't matter.
Maybe we can get Allison.
What?
I can't.
Yeah, you're welcome. No problem. Okay. Bye.
Okay.
Allison?
I'm here.
Okay, I just have your name showing. I've lost
That's
your
right.
name.
I turned the picture off.
Okay. My question is, when should we discuss those? Should we wait until next year about the parcel tax for those units, those properties that can never?
That's an LAC item, and we'll do some research and bring it up at the next LAC meeting.
Okay, I have no comment on this document then. Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions before we move on?
Thank you. So I have put together a graph showing the 2018 and 2019 consumption in comparison. It was slightly lower in 2019 with 146 cubic meters on average per connection, while the year before it was, double check, it was about 160 cubic meters per connection. This brings the daily average consumption to 0.4 cubic meters versus 0.43 the year before. You can see we have everything from almost zero consumption to over 300 cubic meters per connection. Some of the very high consumptions would be leaks that that bring it up, and people are informed by a letter or email if they have signed up about their leak, and then can take care of it.
Just a question I've got. I think this graph would be, it's a useful graph and it's interesting to see from year to year, but I think the consumption data you've got for, I guess this is 2019, I think would be useful. And you did read the number for 2018. I think the graph would be more useful to have the two each year shown.
Yeah, I have only shown I have not written down the numbers for 2019. I can for 2018, I can add that the next time, yes.
Yeah, I think it would be handy because then that's a fairly, I think it looks like about a 10% reduction, right?
160 versus 146 cubic meters on average.
There may have been one or two units added as well.
They were added in 2020. Actually, they wouldn't be seen in this graph. But yeah, I can certainly add the numbers. I was just thinking this year it may be too much information on one graph. I just thought I'd add it when talking.
Okay, any more questions on this? Moving on. Raj?
Thanks, Steph. So we have here on this slide our 2019 actual results in comparison to budget, and we've also provided the 2018 results just for context. I'll go through the items where there's significant variances to budget. So one new connection fee for $12,950, which we don't budget for, and that $12,750 increased the contributions to the reserve for capital. In addition, our return on investments was higher than budgeted, primarily due to higher reserve balance. We will need to adjust our budgeting number for return on investments next year. And in turning our attention to expenditures here, essentially the budget for maintenance wasn't fully called for access road maintenance and reservoir. Hold on just a sec, sorry. I'll have to read my own comment here. I kind of lost my train of thought.
Staff compensation is significantly up.
Staff compensation is primarily an allocation relative to Hood Point based relative to the total number of water systems. So overall staff compensation costs were higher than budgeted for all of the water systems. So they're allocated to each water system based on the number of connections relative to total number of connections. So there is a slightly unfavorable variance in Hood Point in staff compensation. Overall, there was, if you take a look at your transfer, there was savings in some, in most expenditure line items, and the transfer to reserves exceeded the budget, or the transfer to the capital reserve exceeded the budgeted amount of 17,500 by 41,400. So whatever favorable variances there are, they go to your reserve. And essentially, I'm just going to open it up for questions in terms of if you have questions on any of those expenditures there. We did In the 2020 budget, the provision for legal costs has been adjusted. So you'll see when we take a look at the 5-year financial plan, it's slightly lower, and that was based on input from the LAC. There was a provision for a one-time legal expenditure that carried forward in the budget from year to year. So it is included in the 2019 budget, but it's been adjusted in subsequent year budgets.
I have one question that's
Yes, Tom?
general question. In staff compensation, I may not understand this properly, but is the way the municipality allocates staff time, for every $100 of staff time, they take the number of total connections on all the systems and divide that and then multiply it
Okay.
by 93 in our case?
So let me give you a little bit more of an explanation on that. So staff compensation is charged to the utilities in two ways. There's the operating component and the administrative component. So all of the direct operating utilities workers that we have, I believe there's 6 FTEs in utilities, if I'm not mistaken, they are all charged to utilities. And then their time is prorated based on the number of connections. Then there is for administrative effort, so the amount of a percentage of staff's time, a percentage of, or most of Annette's time, because she spent all her time on utilities, and then a portion of a percentage of my time, and a percentage of Patrick's time gets charged to utilities based on the amount of time that we spend on utilities. And then whatever gets charged as a percentage of our time to utilities, I think where Patrick's my time is probably 10% of my time is charged to utilities, which is less than the amount of effort that goes into watching utilities. We probably need to take a look at those allocations in terms of how much time our administrative staff does spend on utilities. We haven't revisited those allocations since I've been here. Essentially, percentage of our time gets charged to utilities, and then whatever is utilities is prorated to each water system based on the number of connections relative to total connections.
So Raj, if Blue Water has taken a huge amount of administrative time in this particular fiscal period, that's irrelevant in the sense of it's just added to all administrative time. And as I say, we have 93, whatever, 93 is the numerator and the denominator is the total number of connections. Is that correct?
I would say, yes, that is correct. We are allocating based on the number of water connections. And in an anomaly year where one water system may take up a little bit more time than other water systems, we don't adjust for that, or we haven't adjusted for that.
Annette, what's the total number of water connections in all systems?
It's just over 1,200.
Yeah.
So any costs are 90, the multiplier is 93 over 1,200 times whatever it is. That's what Hood Point pays.
That would generally be the idea, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if there's no more questions on the 2019 operating results, Steph, can you go to the next slide, please?
Oh, sorry, Raj. I thought you were going down some of the items here in detail, but just one thing that pops out for me, because I happened to see the Tunstall Bay operating that you had out this morning. And
Right.
I just wondered on legal and audit and insurance, we've got, well, it was actual 5,000 approximately in 2018. Now it's 3,700, but Tunstall Bay only shows 741 in 18, then going to 897. Well, I just wonder why there would be such a discrepancy in allocating. Again, I've always been concerned that those three items get lumped because you can't see, but I would think insurance.
There's very little in that 3,700 in terms of the audit and legal costs. Most of that is insurance. About 2,800 of that $3,700 is insurance. And the insurance is allocated based on basically our schedule of insured values. So our insured values are split out between the general fund and each of the utilities' insurable value of the assets. And so in terms of our total insurance costs for building and contents, I believe Hood Point's value of insured assets is about 6% of our total. And so that allocated about $2,700 to Hood Point. It's not this insurance allocation is not based on the number of connections. It's actually based on the insured value of Hood Point's assets relative to the total cost of insurance.
It's Allison, a follow-up question. So King Edward Bay has a really low allocation for legal audit and insurance as well.
So, I mean, they are combined, but King Edward Bay, so for example, King Edward Bay's infrastructure is probably less than about half the value of Hood Point's infrastructure.
Even that big, nice new water tank.
Pardon?
That big water tank and stuff, that's...
I'm basing it on the schedule of insured values, Allison. So the value of insured assets, yes, KEB is substantially less than Hood Point.
So the other question is...
Yeah, well, I guess that's always been my concern since day one, is that to lump three separate things like legal, audit, insurance, or even water fee, somehow there needs to be a little bit more of a breakdown, but maybe we can talk about that when we have, I assume, an LAC meeting.
LAC meeting, okay.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Any other questions on the 2019 operating results?
Hearing none.
Hearing none, Steph, can you move to the next slide? So the next slide here is the 2019 capital results. So in 2019, we had one capital project. It was a capital chlorination shed with a budget of $15,000, and the actual expenditures came in just slightly favorable to budget. Can we go to the next slide, Steph?
No questions on that slide? Okay.
So we have the 5-year financial plan here, and essentially what we've got here is we've used assumptions on staff compensation, for all the expenditure items. So generally speaking, there's about a 2% inflation factor used for anticipated increase in costs in year over year. I was not aware of any anomalies that would impact that. So showing you the 5-year financial plan provision that we have for user fees and revenues from 2020 to 2024.
Again, you're assuming the number of connections will stay the same.
Yes, this is assuming it's based on the current number of connections. There's no provision for an increase in number of connections here.
Anybody else have comments? Questions?
And then in terms of the 2020 to 2024 5-year financial plan, the projects included for 2020 were reviewed with the local advisory committee in the fall of 2019. Year to date, we have provisions for, this description could be better. The description that says new main line and water meters was actually a provision for to replace and calibrate existing meters that were believed to not be providing quality data and to invest in new meters to provide new data. It was a placeholder and there's been no spending on that. So that being said, again, it's a 5-year projection for capital with, outer years will change when we go through our capital planning process for 2021. But in terms of the 2020 budget of $26,800, there's been very little nominal spending. So recorded year to date so far in our general ledger.
Could you tell us what the water systems master plan
Item is? It is Patrick. Patrick, can you talk a little bit more about the water system master plan item?
Okay. So hang on, what does it show here? Okay.
An allocated
Place-
budget for 4,000
Yeah.
in
Well,
2020.
Okay, when I started here, there was a budget item to proceed with an island-wide master plan that wasn't well supported generally by the water system LACs. So we didn't move forward with that. The only thing that was included is developing a terms of reference so that we could move forward with it in future years. The way things are actually going, we have some major issues that need to be addressed, both on the east side and the west side of the island, that are forcing us to proceed with some consulting work relating to those issues. One being the Eagle Cliff situation, the other being the mainly the blue water situation on the west side of the island. Essentially, those are significant pieces of what would island-wide water master plan would comprise. And we're proceeding with an RFP to hire someone to help us with that work. Their fee proposals and cost tracking will be aligned with the water systems that are being addressed in various components of the work. So those costs would be portioned according to that breakdown. So in the case of that work, there wouldn't be, there really isn't a hood point component. There's some peripheral connection to, all the considerations for Eagle Cliff, but it's that's just peripheral. So at this point, we don't have we haven't confirmed what the plan is for a broader and island-wide water master plan, or whether that's even a priority. We're focusing on proceeding with the critical pieces that address our major issues. So that's a long answer for I'm not really sure that those numbers that you see in there make much sense. And we'll have to review what needs to be included in that general line item when we get into our budgeting process for next year.
Yeah, that would be my question now, rather than trying to go on there, is for Raj, is there going to be a new budget at the LAC meeting we're going to be having, I assume sometime in October, November, is that?
We are going to be moving into our budgeting exercise and looking at budget in late September, early October. So we anticipate, it would not make sense to call an LAC meeting before we have a budget to discuss with you guys. So at those LAC meetings, I know Sept was saying they're in October, they may be late October, perhaps November. We need to be ready with the budget when we come forward with you guys. So we will be working on the budget for the upcoming year before the next LAC meeting.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. So these numbers that we're looking at today could be different when we get to our,
It could be, and just to rest assured that $4,000 item has very nominal, there's very nominal spending against it. I'm looking in the GL right now. In 2020, we have a $300 charge. So the allocation when we had done this was based on, we took into anticipation the total cost of what the water system master plan preliminary study would be, and it was $50,000. And we didn't have an allocation. The only allocation method we had at the time for that was number of connections versus total connections. However, it was discussed that there would be, if there would be the equity of that charge would be looked at. So that being said, there's very nominal spending against that, and I don't anticipate there being
okay.
That's good.
Yeah, we can, I guess, look at it down in November, whenever the next budget comes. Thanks.
Okay. So there any more questions on the 5-year financial plan for capital? If not, Steph, can you move to the next slide? So the final slide the second final slide here is an accounting of your reserve balances. So the closing reserve balance for capital works in Hood Point was $424,700. There was a contribution of just shy of $59,000. 2019 capital works funded from the reserve totaled $14,176. So the closing 2019 reserve balance for capital works is just shy of $470,000 for Hood Point infrastructure. And in terms of the infrastructure value, can we go to the next slide, Steph? And the next slide just gives you an anticipated value or an estimated value of the replacement cost of Hood Point infrastructure. It's so the replacement, if you had to replace the entire Hood Point system today, it's estimated that the replacement cost of that would be $6.3 million.
I asked this last time, but I don't know the answer. Does that include our dam?
It does.
So there are other people who draw water from there. Is that allocated?
Sorry, is what allocated?
I'm sorry. We have 100 and call it 150 licenses, and there are probably another 25 or 30 that go elsewhere. Is the full cost and utilization of the dam and its replacement cost all directed to Hood Point?
If it was part of the Hood Point infrastructure, the replacement cost is included in here. Yes, it wouldn't be allocated anywhere else.
Yeah, well, that's something we can look at the future meeting, I'm sure.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to understand this number. We raised from our members $1.5 million as a rough number and spent it on the system. Where does the $6.3 million come from? Is it broken out somewhere?
So this is I've taken this from the previous manager of public works. He had gone through everything. If he needed to replace all of the piping infrastructure, and basically if your system collapsed and you needed to replace it, he had anticipated the replacement cost to be $6,300,000. And I had checked the reasonability. So it's an estimate, and he's gone through all of the infrastructure and made an estimate of what it would cost to replace it. And then I had checked the reasonability of that number by taking what has been acquired at historical cost over inception and inflating it by an annual inflation factor, and it seemed to be a reasonable number. It is an estimate. There's no, That's all I can say at the time.
Could I ask for a copy of that breakout, please? Whatever you looked at and found it to be reasonable?
I will, yeah, I will go through the files and dig that out. I'm
Thank you.
analysis number, but I'll look for that. At a high level, any other questions?
So is that in terms of the insured value, does that have an, obviously must have an impact on the insured value?
No, I don't believe this has no relation. Well, this does not have a direct correlation or relationship to the insured value.
What is an insurance value replacement cost insurance?
I'm just look the insured value of Eagle Cliff. I'll have to go through the schedule to see what it's based on. It is lower than this, so I'll have to. It's definitely does not approach anywhere near 6.3 million, Allison.
So the pipes in the ground may not be insured.
Probably not. I don't believe you can. I don't believe linear infrastructure is insured in any municipality.
And the dam might not be.
Yeah, all I know is basically right now at this point, I can see that the insured value is comprised of a building and contents. So linear structure is not included.
Well, that's something you can maybe review, and at our LAC meeting, we can go into that.
Yeah, I can look into what's insured in terms of the detail. I mean, there is a detailed schedule there. I just don't have it in front of me. I have a high level schedule at this point.
You can just, this question comes from ignorance. If you can't insure the lines in the ground, I would like to be able to insure the lines in the ground if we had an earthquake or something to replace. Maybe you could just tell us very briefly what municipally can be insured.
Look into that. I can't tell you offhand. I'm not.
Yeah, well, that's something you can maybe look at for our next LAC meeting, so we can review
Good
it.
question, Tom.
Because the last question I've got here on this big number is the reserve. So does it have, I can't remember whether it's covered down farther down, whether it has that big number has any correlation between the amount of money we are expected to set up in the reserve over time.
I would say that you're better off than some of the other water systems, but generally speaking, given the age of the water system, I would say that the reserve balance is light. Maybe I'll ask Patrick to provide comment on that as well. But generally speaking, they say that for new infrastructure, a recommended contribution to your reserves should be about 1% of the replacement cost of your infrastructure. So that's based on information from the asset management experts out there. So if we go back a few slides, you can see that the annual contribution to your reserve, go back one more slide, Steph. The annual contribution to the budgeted contribution to the reserve is 17,500. The actual contribution, because of other items and whatnot, was about 60,000, which I believe does represent 1% of that value. So your budgeted contribution is significantly lower than the recommended value, and that's for new infrastructure. So this is aged infrastructure, and given that the contribution has been lower for a number of years, I would say the contribution to reserves is light in contrast to the replacement cost of the system.
Raj, one thing though, the linear infrastructure is relatively new, because that was all buried and put in the ground in what, 2001, 2002?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Except, but I don't know about the line from the lake. How old that
Yes.
one is.
Yeah, so without us actually going into detail and having somebody go in and take a look at all this infrastructure, unfortunately, I can only comment at that high level and at generalities at this point.
Raj, just so that you're aware, when we raised all this money from our members, many of us voted in favor in a referendum as to whether or not there should be a BIM. We voted in favor of the creation of a municipality for a very specific reason, at least some of us did. The municipality would allow us to put our water lines under municipal roads. The province did not allow us to do that. And given the very woody nature of Hood Point, it was almost impossible to bury water lines. By virtue of the creation under the letters patent of the Bowen Island municipality, we were able in 2001 to bury the lines under municipal roads. So those lines, and Patrick, you can tell us, but those lines were buried professionally by Capilano in 2001. I don't know how long they last, but it's since the creation of the municipality.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, ideally, your contributions to reserve should be based on an asset management plan that identifies the age of all the assets, the expected lifespan remaining, the capital replacement cost, and that's all put together as a 30-year plus capital plan. I mean, we're not there with any of our infrastructure, but that's our objective is to get there. And right now, all we have to go on is our the infrastructure capital replacement estimates that Raj has presented, and some general guidelines about best practice in asset management.
Right.
And generally, yeah, we're not, all of the systems are undercapitalized. Hood Point is much better capitalized than the rest for the most part. So there's less of a gap there, but still.
To answer, Patrick, to answer Bob's question, if the replacement cost was $5 million, we'd be much closer to coming to 1%, or the numbers are there on the sheet. But if that number were 5, we'd be getting closer than we are at 6.3. I think that was Bob's question.
Sure. If you've got less assets that you're responsible for replacing, then you don't need as much money. That's, yeah.
Yeah, I guess my question was more related to the six. Are we targeting to be at some point in the long way down the road at 6.3 million, or is it we take a percentage of the 6.3? In other words, what's an adequate reserve amount?
That's a good question. That's something that we have to determine as we develop our asset management program. And it depends on the value and the age of the assets. So if you've got a lot of high value assets that need to be, or you're anticipating need to be replaced in the next, 10 years, then you would need a lot more reserves than if your highest value assets are expected to be replaced in later years. So I don't have a good answer at this point.
Yeah, well, I think we already, Patrick, did, Raj, adjusted our parcel tax increase to 400 connected and 300 unconnected. So I think that was going to bring us up to somewhere around $50,000 in the next year. But that's something, again, maybe we can review at our LAC meeting at budget time.
Steph,
Yes, does anybody have any more questions for Raj regarding financial reports?
No.
no,
Okay, I'm gonna get out of this PowerPoint. Thank you very much, Raj. And so the next two items for Public Works are, we've got a Vancouver Coastal Health Report, which is 55 pages. Having read that, does anybody have any questions for Patrick regarding the Vancouver Coastal Health Report?
No.
Patrick, I have one question which isn't directly on point. I have friends who have their own water systems on Bowen. They're just totally, the province doesn't care about them because they're so small.
Oh,
You want me to have a go at that one, Patrick?
he was muted.
Yes, please.
I'm happy to, sure, go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, if you've got, there's, depends what size the system is.
Yeah.
The 15 and under, they don't really care.
Well, they technically, anything more than 2 houses is regulated by the province. It's a matter of scale. Like there's so many small systems out there that they really don't have the resources to monitor everything. So they're really focused on, the larger systems and systems where there's issues, where there's problems identified.
Yeah, legally, you're a purveyor of water under the Health Act if you're serving water to more than 2 people, but they, from a practical thing, if you go and look in the regulations, there's different requirements if you're under 15 or over 15.
Thank you. And they're limited on funds and personnel to pursue the smaller systems.
Yeah.
Well, it's a risk assessment, damage control sort of thing. I mean, the code base system is,
Thank you. That answers my question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, and does there anybody else have questions regarding the Vancouver Coastal Health Report?
No.
And does anyone have any questions regarding the RFP that was also included in your agenda and is posted on our website? What someone would think we just met recently. Well, looks like we get to go to lunch early.
If there's any other questions.
No? Okay, well, we'll have LAC meeting. I've made notes of what you'd like on the next agenda, but of course I'll be working with Steve and staff to create an excellent agenda for the end of October budget review meetings. And thank you very much for attending today. Thank you, Maurice, for being our sole member of the public.
Thank you.
Thank
Stay
you.
safe out there. The world is burning.
Can you see the ferry? Can you see as
I can
far as the
hear-
ferry?
Oh, talking to me?
I'm asking about clarity there.
It's a wall. It's a white wall. Can't see the ferry. Normally I can, but
It's very hazy.
Tom, at Good Hood Point,
No, you can't see
Oh.
anything. You can't see
can't see
my flag.
the ferry's going by our place and it's sounding its horn continuously.
yeah.
Speaking of
Unbelievable.
which, I could just hear the one out front now doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Zeph,
It was
thanks
really
for
dark last night. That's one thing. No ambient light.
And it's strange how cold it is. Like it actually stopped the sunlight from warming us.
Steph, thanks for running these meetings.
Okay, thanks a lot. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
your volunteer work.
Thanks, everybody.
Now, goodbye.
Bye-bye.